All right, I need your help in welcoming Chad Hardin to the stage.
Hey,
for stage demo. Woo! Show me those Harley Quinn fans out there. Woo! All right.
All right.
Situated. All right. So what are you drawing for us today, Chad? Of course.
Superman.
That's a good one. All right. See, you already got some hecklers.
I got hecklers in the front row.
All right.
It's to hide the fact that
Very fashionable.
the gleam
I
of
dig
my dome. It's to cover my head diaper. There we go.
That's awesome. All right.
Okay,
let's
we
get
going? All right.
All right. So can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and what inspired you to become an artist?
You know, I grew up watching those cartoons that they had Saturday morning, Super Friends and
Yeah.
all that good stuff.
More heckling. I love it.
And I just really was into it, so I drew it, and I stuck with it, and then I turned it into a career. So, and now Jimmy harasses me all day long.
That's amazing. So, I know we have some awesome artists in this front already, but any other, who inspired you, I guess, as a young kid to become an artist? As another artist that you've admired for years.
Well, when I read reading books when I was a kid, I read a lot of the Frank Miller Dark Knight. It was a great time to be into comics. It was Watchmen, Frank Miller, Alan Moore, and so you had artists like
Dave Gibbons.
thank you, Dave Gibbons,
Frank Miller.
That's his name?
Brian, who did Killing Joke? Brian Bolland. So fantastic stuff. I read a lot of, I read everything. I read absolutely everything and just tried to copy as much as I could and learn as much as I could from what I saw. And then as I got older, I went to art school.
Okay.
I actually have a master's degree now. So I took it as far as I could go with my education, my traditional education. And they taught me, comics, when you're self-taught, you forget things like anatomy sometimes. You forget 3-point perspective, 2-point perspective, how to draw things, how they appear in nature. And so when you go to a college, sometimes they help you get those foundational things like composition, design, anatomy, and they really help you sort of discover the things that you should really be paying attention to. So for me, a college education was well worth it. But I have friends who do comics that have never taken an art class. So it really depends on what you need as a person. If you need that help, then by all means, there's education. There's people there to help you, and if you don't, then just bring your portfolio on up and get it in front of some of these editors, and they'll get you drawn.
That's great. So what was the first DC character you ever drew?
It was actually Dr. Fate for Countdown to Mystery. I'll never forget, I'd been sending DC samples since I was 16 years old. And I finally got in here at Comic-Con. DC was doing a talent search. And I had business cards from a whole bunch of different editors. And so I just sent them samples of whatever I was working on. And I sent them samples for 2 years. And one day out of the blue, I got a phone call from Joey Cavallari, who was the senior editor on Countdown to Mystery. And his artist had been in a car accident and broke his arm.
Wow.
And he said, I got a 6-page assignment and I got a 22-page assignment. Which one do you want? I was like, I want them both.
All right. I like that determination.
Yeah. He was like, well, I'm just going to give you the one.
Okay.
But that ended up being Countdown to Mystery. And I got to work with Steve Gerber and some really big names. So
that's great. So out of, I guess, since you've been drawing Harley Quinn now for a while, what is your favorite aspect of her that you like to draw?
You know, she's just so expressive and she's so fun, and she's always doing something new, dressed in a different uniform, using a different weapon, fighting a different villain.
Yeah.
So there's nothing routine or boring about her whatsoever. She's always doing
Exactly.
something new. So she keeps you on your toes. When you think you know what's going on, she takes a left turn, and I really do enjoy the humor too.
Definitely.
Lots of times working on Harley is almost like working on Mad Magazine. So
That's a really good tie.
we
Yes,
have,
it
yeah,
is.
we have a really good time with it.
That's
So,
great. So, what does a typical work day for you look like, Chad?
Well, you get up in the morning and you rub the goobers out of your eyes, and you go and you put some coffee in the pot, and you go walk around the neighborhood, get the blood circulating,
Uh-huh.
and then you come back and take a quick shower, and by that time your coffee should be ready, and you drink as much of that as you can, and then you usually start drawing if you start drawing early in the morning, because it takes a while to warm up,
Okay.
and the earlier you start, the better you get before the end of the day, the more work you get done.
Wow.
And so if you start drawing early and you get in the zone, so to speak, early, then typically you have a really good drawing day, and you usually be done around midnight, and you go to bed. But if you goof around in the morning and you don't get right to it,
Yeah.
then by the time you're warmed up, it's usually like 3 in the morning, and that's no good.
Yeah.
So you got to get up early, and you got to get drawing.
It's amazing. So I guess what types of panels maybe take the most time, like an action sequence or a landscape shot, anything like that?
It's the double wide spreads.
I see one of our pens.
It's the double wide spreads. Ooh, that pen is not doing so hot. Let's not use that. Let's find one where the ink is not boiling out.
Uh-oh.
Typically, anytime there's a bunch of people on the page, it really every time you're drawing a person, for me, it just sort of slows it down. So when you have like a big battle scene and there's like a ton of people and there's bullets flying or there's stuff blowing up, those are pages that you're just going to have to really hunker down and pay attention and focus and plan on being there the whole day.
Yeah.
And it really is just a matter of having the discipline to sit down and stick with it and not get bored. I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Great.
Listen to a lot of talk radio, a lot of podcasts. I put on movies I've seen a million times so I can just sort of listen and know what's going on.
Yeah. Background.
Don't ever try and watch a movie you haven't seen before and draw a page at the same time. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, because the focus is not there, like
Yeah.
you said. It's good background noise, if you will.
Yeah, you can put on like Indiana Jones or something that you've seen a million times,
Very nice.
and you'll be okay. But if you put on whatever the new movie is that week, you'll be in trouble.
That's great. I think we have an audience question. Yeah.
So are you actually paying attention when you're listening to talk radio or whatever you're listening to when you're drawing?
You'd be surprised. If I find myself stopping and actually listening to it, then I got to turn it off. That's sort of the rule. I've avoided a lot of talk radio for the last 6 months or so. I just can't. So, but I listen to a lot of. I love audiobooks, and I'm listening to a lot of. Right now, I'm listening to The Expanse books. They have a show on Sci-Fi Channel. I hate to plug another media outlet, but I really think those are some great books to listen to. I've listened to a lot of Stephen King A lot of Neil Gaiman.
Both
I
good
love
choices.
Charles Dickens. I listen to Dickens novels over and over again. So just anything to sort of keep you in that chair and keep you drawing and keep you focused on your work. That's always good.
That's great. I think we have another audience question over here. Yeah, hun.
Around how many hours a day do you draw?
Probably, at least 8, sometimes 16. So you got to really love doing it.
Yeah.
You
Depends
got to
on
really love doing it.
if you're on a
But
roll.
when I talked about getting in the zone. When you get in the zone, you really stop noticing that time's going by. You get really like focused, and it's almost like you enter like a hypnotic state. And that's where you want to be, because that's when your drawings are the best, and you really don't notice that you're there and that you're doing it. It's just like you're so focused on the work that your mind is just completely devoted to drawing, and that's where you want to be as an artist, because that's when your artwork turns out the best, and that's when it's not drudgery. But it takes a lot of mental discipline to sort of shut everything out. I teach a lot of students now. I'm actually an art professor at a college in Utah, and a lot of my students, I call them kids, but they're adults. They have a really hard time putting down the phone. And I'm telling them, I'm like, look, if you're answering phone calls in the middle of figure drawing class, you're not paying attention to your figure drawing. And it's really hard for them to, they get a little angry at me because they just love their phone. They love having it all the time. They love feeling connected to whatever they're connected to. And I'm like, look, if you're going to be an artist, you got to learn to like cut out the distractions and focus on your artwork. And for some of them, that's really, really hard to do. And they don't like hearing that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to be your teacher. And if you
True.
want to learn, you got to put down your phone.
Very true. Very true.
So
That's awesome. I think we have another audience question.
So what is your favorite music to draw to?
music, it really depends on the mood. It really depends on my mood. If I'm angry, listen to a lot of Misfits and Glenn Danzig. If I'm happy, I'll usually listen to like Queen or David Bowie.
Nice.
But I have just about every type of music. I even have a few country western songs. So I think I have some Toby Keith and some Garth Brooks. So I really I'll listen to anything that sort of catches my fancy for that day. I mean, I literally have just about everything. So.
That's great. So,
And if I don't have it, my kids have it. I mean, I got Beyonce too.
Oh.
So.
That's good. Good choices too. So what character have you not drawn out of the DC universe yet that you would like to?
I've drawn a lot of characters. Now my son wants me on a Batman book.
Oh.
He's like, you're okay, Dad, but you're not Greg Capullo.
Oh.
You're not Jim Lee. I'm like, thanks, son.
Oh.
Thank you, son, for keeping me humble and knocking me down a peg.
Oh.
But you know what? I've been very fortunate. I really count myself very lucky to be on Harley and,
Totally.
to be on any DC book. Before Harley, I did Zatanna with Paul Dini.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I said, with Dr. Fate, I got to work with Mike Grell on Warlord.
Yeah.
And so I've been very fortunate. And I think if I just keep working hard, I'll continue to be fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think any character I get, I'm going to have a good time with. So.
That's great. For some of the casual fans that may be coming new into the comics and reading Harley Quinn, what is like one takeaway you'd like them to have?
Just let yourself be entertained. It's so funny. There's a lot of passionate Harley fans out there, and I love fans that are passionate. But sometimes, like, people will get angry that she's not in a certain costume or she's not drawn a certain way. And you know what? I like variety. I like to see what different artists do. And I think that if we all drew it the same way and we all did it the same way, then it'd be really boring after a while. It'd get boring really quick. And so, let yourself be entertained. Let the artists tell their stories. Try to appreciate that thing. Maybe if it's not something you like immediately, give it a chance. See if it doesn't appeal to you later on. Have an open mind when it comes to new teams and new artists and new books. Let them tell their story before you make any judgments about how you want it to be. And I think if you do that, you'll enjoy a lot more books. You'll find that you appreciate a lot more writers, that you'll appreciate a lot more art, and you'll just have a better time reading comics.
That's great. So if you could give one piece of advice for new artists that want to break into the comics industry, what would that be?
Draw all the time. Learn to love to draw. Learn to draw anatomy. Learn to draw environments. Learn to draw from nature. Learn to draw from your imagination. But the most important thing is to always be drawing. There's a really good book out there that I refer my students to called Outliers. And it dispels the myth of prodigy. And it talks about how people who are truly gifted and truly good at something put the time in. And don't get me wrong, I do believe that people have natural inclinations. And I think I had a natural inclination towards drawing. But you have to put that time in if you want to be exceptional, if you want to be good.
Yeah.
So learn to just always be drawing and draw without distractions. And I think you'll do just fine. And I think you'll have a good time. And I think others will start to appreciate what you're doing too.
That's great. Did you have one? Okay, one more audience question.
What type of pens are you using, and what's your technique?
So I started with these Prismacolor Colorase, and I like these because it's not graphite. It's a type of colored pencil, and it has a harder lead than the typical. I shouldn't say harder lead, but it has a harder filament than the typical Prismacolors. So it's a little bit more waxy, but what that allows you to erase it a lot better too. And it really blends nicely with these markers, which are Copic markers. These are alcohol-based markers. And so I can do the drawing, and then when I rub over it with the Colorase, it'll blend. It'll give a nice little blend, nice little effect. And then when I get that done, then I go over it with ink. Now, sometimes I use brushes, but when I'm on the road and traveling, like I am for San Diego, I'll typically use some type of pen. These are microns. You can use Prismacolors. You can use Touch. Touch has a booth here, and they gave me a few free samples the other day, and they have a really great product. So, but the thing you got to do is you got to learn which mediums you like and which ones give you the best results. And the only way to do that is through trial and error. So this is something I've just come up with experimenting on my own, and it works for me. But it might not work for you. So just go out there and give it a try and see if you like it. And if you like it, stick with it. And if you don't, find something else. So
Great. Good question. So as we kind of maybe segue into what the collaboration looks like when you're drawing a comic and you're working with a comic team on a given series, do you guys start out with meetings before you go into the layout mode, and then you actually sit down to do the work? What does that kind of look like, or at least from your experience?
Jimmy and Amanda send me the script, and the first thing I do is I read the script from page 1 to the last page.
Okay.
And that way you know exactly what's coming every page, and you can sort of plan for that. And then I do thumbnails, which are really, really small drawings. That just sort of helps me plan for page composition, panel flow, things like that. And then after I get my thumbnails done, I'll do rough pencils. Now, when I first started doing comics, I would take a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, and I would fold it in half. And DC, they send you paper to work on that looks like this, but it's a lot bigger. And I would Xerox these lines onto that 11 by 17 paper, and I would use that for my rough pencils, and then I would blow it up, and I would do tight pencils over my rough pencils, and I would send it to an inker. But I've completely changed all that now because I basically do everything digitally on an iPad Pro now. And matter of fact, the only time I really draw traditionally is if I'm drawing for commissions or something like this.
Okay.
Because the drawing digitally allows me to be a lot faster, hit my deadlines easier. I can draw on airplanes, I can draw on hotel rooms. It's a lot easier to just throw your iPad in your backpack and off you go. I lose a little bit of money because I don't have original art to sell, but I'm able to hit my deadlines, and I mean, I think that's probably the most important thing when it comes to comic, is hitting those deadlines.
Great.
So
It's awesome.
I think it's more important to get the book out to the audience than it is to provide collectors with original art. So
That's great. And what is one characteristic, aside from just all the excitement, like you said, of the story always changing, especially within the Harley Quinn series, what's your one favorite maybe characteristic that Harley embodies that you really find comes to the page with your art?
You know, I like that Harley just sort of falls in love with whatever she falls in love with, and that she's, you know, once she loves that thing, she never stops loving that thing. Whether it be the stray dog on the corner, or whether it's you know, one of her sidekicks, or whether it's a favorite gun, it really doesn't matter. And I think that's one of the things that makes her a popular character with so many people.
Yeah.
Is that they can identify with that. You know, sometimes we love what we're gonna love, and there's no rhyme or reason or rationality to it. And and then sometimes she just sort of lets that just, you know, she lets that take her a little too far. But it always leads to someplace entertaining. It always leads someplace fun. And I think that's why a lot of people respond so well to the book. Is our Harley that we're doing is one that we can laugh with and laugh at. And it's not that serious. So
That's great.
it's a good time, Harley.
I love it. All right, I'll take one more audience question, then I think we have to wrap up. Anybody have one? Nope. All right. So let's see. I personally love the current Harley series. Was there a specific page or panel that you maybe stood out to you that you worked on in a recent issue?
You know, look for. I just finished issue 25.
Okay.
So next month, sometime, there's a couple of double wides in there, and I had a lot of fun with those double wides. So,
Awesome.
you know how you asked me which page is taking longer?
Yeah, those were the ones that you said were a little bit tough. Okay.
That's the one I was thinking about. I think I probably worked on a double wide for like 4 days straight. I don't think I moved in those 4 days.
Oh wow.
And it was like a little mini celebration when I got that page done. So
That's awesome. Well, definitely look for that in your local comic shop or bookstore.
Yeah.
And I think we have, I guess, a trivia question now. It's going to be by a show of hands, the first one that we see. So do you have a question for the audience, Chad?
Do I have a trivia question for the audience?
Yeah.
What is the name of Harley's dachshund,
By a show of hands.
who first appeared in issue one?
one.
Issue 1.
The name of Harley Quinn's pet dachshund. Does anybody know the name? No? No? Uh-oh.
I'll give you the hint. It's named after a famous hot dog chain.
Oh, named after a famous
that
hot
help?
dog chain. Does that help?
I see Robin over
Oh,
here.
sorry. Robin, sorry. Okay. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that right? You heard it?
What'd she say?
What'd you say? Frank. She said Frank.
Frank, no.
Oh,
That is
okay.
not correct.
I saw your, yeah?
Nathan.
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 Oh, sorry,
That is
Robin.
correct.
Yes, okay, cool. Well, if you can come to the side, sir. Thank you guys so much. Please give it up for Chad and a drawing of Harley Quinn.
Thank you, guys.